Hello again, Struck. I'm bringing you another What the Struck is review impressions video for a game, and this is for Against the Storm. A nice mixture of roguelite meets city builder, kind of a fusion of both genres, and a very successful one, I might say. You hopefully would find out why after watching this video based on what I say about the game. It's probably the weirdest and the good kind of weirdest game I've recently played, and there are a lot of things to talk about it. That's why I've also included a website version of this guide, and I'm recording this on the 26th, but this review would be out on the 28th because of the embargo for the game. So yes, what could I tell you about the game in this intro? It's already out on the Epic Game Store. There is a playable demo. It has been out for a year on the Epic Game Store, but on November 1st it's coming to Steam and GOG for PC. So hopefully that's good news to those of you out there who are waiting for the game to come out. I do believe it's a sleeper hit waiting to happen. I do believe it's one of those hidden gems that I every now and then stumble upon. So buckle up. I hope you enjoyed this video and let's go. A quick summary of the game's story. Against the Storm is a roguelite city builder set in a fantasy world where the raining never stops. You are the Queen's Viceroy, a pioneer set into the wilds and tasked with establishing and managing new settlements inhabited by humans, lizard folk, beavers, and harpies. Your goal is surviving long enough while gathering various valuable resources that are needed to rebuild and upgrade the smoldering city. That city is the only safe haven against the Blightstorm, a cycle of destruction that ravishes everything in its path, leaving devastation. Only the ones who have what it takes can overcome the storm. Let's start with a summary of the key features. Well, meta progression system, definitely something interesting to keep in mind. A deck building system, if one might even call it that way, 4 different species. A perk system, Dungeon Keeper like exploration. To those of you who don't know what Dungeon Keeper is, it was a series of games back in the day that I really enjoyed playing. Ruins and rebuilding, more about that in a very few moments. Renown system and a production network. As I mentioned, permanent and temporary progress. The game developers code is the meta progression system. Your settlements leave a permanent mark on the overworld map, which is what you're seeing here. This is my first non-tutorial settlement. There were some tutorial settlements, but they disappeared as soon as I finished this one. And this gives players access to new building blueprints, quests, perks, and starting conditions. As I said, they're calling this the meta progression system, and it is the bread and butter of the game that keeps us playing. Just one more run is a phrase I never expected to associate with a city builder game, but now I can, thanks to Against the Storm. Each settlement run will reward you with Citadel resources that you can use for permanent upgrades. More about that upgrade system in a moment, but this is your smoldering city. This is where you use those permanent resources. And they are food stockpiles, machinery, and artifacts. In detail, I'll show you this in a moment. And yeah, they're simply called upgrades, but it's a nice, straight to the point name. So while a settlement run may be temporary, each previous run will make your next one easier and more enjoyable thanks to that specific system. How does one start a map? How does one start a run? Well, here in the overworld, next to the Citadel, you have various things. I'll be explaining more about those events and things and treasures, but there's pretty much, actually I could even show you now. There's kind of some treasures that you might find. There's some modifiers on the map, and you kind of try to make your way through them, and eventually you would encounter factions. There will be a segment in this video for factions, and you just pick where you want to place your town. When I placed this town, there was some grain fields here which gave me bonus food, and based on where you place it, you would be earning different rewards. Right now I can apparently only earn food for now. So if we place the city here, we just have to select what type of caravan do we want. Do we want a caravan with 8 harpies or 3 harpies, 5 lizards? That's the choices they're giving me right now. There's a summary and there's modifiers, the type of modifiers you can expect in this map, the types of trees and the natural resources. You also select the difficulty between settler, pioneer, veteran and viceroy, and those are just some of the differences between settler and viceroy. Then you select the resources you want to take with you. Of course, you have a limited amount of embark points, so you can't take too many. And then after that, you embark and you start with your very, very basic settlement layout, the first initial hub, which is a heart and storage. Then you have to build shelters and all sorts of stuff. And we will talk about that in a moment. Let me just quickly show you some of those things to preview before we move on to the next segment. This is the heart and this is the storage. This is how you start. Every settlement run you do will feel unique and make you adapt to the various glades that surround your starting hub, while expanding accordingly to make new hubs. What resources will there be in the neighboring glades? Will there be any nasty surprises I cannot handle in that one dangerous glade nearby? Should I avoid the gamble and not open up any dangerous glades to play it safe? Questions like those are what I felt thinking to myself while playing. Every settlement will require a different approach, and you may not always have all the resources you want, so you better make use of the lemons you're given to make the best kind of lemonade possible each run. Creating settlements feels fun, and the quality of life for an early access game is amazing. At first, players don't have access to many building blueprints, and that seems like a good thing, especially so for people who may not have much experience with city builders. I also understand that some city builder veterans may be put off by this, and they might feel like there isn't much to do at first, but eventually, after a few runs, you'll be unlocking more and more blueprints and get access to a wide array of buildings to use for your city building endeavors. There are a few major categories of structures in structures buildings in the game. Those are roads, which is paths, paved roads, and the likes. Camps. You can find things like woodcutter, stonecutter, harvester, scavengers, trapper, and all sorts of camps like those. Then there's food production, where you have farm fields, farms, smokehouses, and other food source adjacent buildings. Then there's housing, which again you have the common shelter that houses 3 people, but of any species, and then there's species specific houses later on that you can unlock. And then we get things such as industry. You have workstations, makeshift posts, rain collectors, mines, lumber mills, a bricklayer or whatever it was called, the thing that makes bricks from clay, and all sorts of other industry related things that take raw materials and turns them into final products, or takes the raw materials, turns them into tier 2 materials to further process eventually later. Then you have things like city buildings, which again allows you to make new hubs. Again, you start with that first main heart and storage, but you can make new storages and new hearts, because the heart has a range, and you can only build housing within the range of the heart. Also, lizardmen, for example, prefer working in warm places. That means the buildings where a lizardman works would be best put into within the range of the heart, within the warmth. There is also a trading post. I will talk about trading later, but there's all sorts of things one can do with it. Then there's decorations. There's 3 types of decorations I've encountered so far: comfort, aesthetics, and harmony. They all have each of them have their own purpose. For example, you need for comfort decorations next to a heart to upgrade it to the next level of a hub. And so far I haven't reached more than the second level hub. That seems to be the maximum. but maybe later I would be able to unlock higher level hubs. Now there is something to which the game refers to as deck, which is blueprints, perks, conditions. And they're saying that players will assemble a deck of blueprints, perks, and conditions before each run. And I'm assuming they are talking about this. When you start the run, you have a choice to pick between three different buildings, blueprints, 3 times. At least for now, that has always been the case. So do I want a brickyard, leatherworker, carpenter? What do I want to pick? And based on the map, I probably should have researched what type of map there would be to know what kind of thing would be best. But it lets you pick between those based on what kind of resources you might expect in this area. And see, brickyard is repeating itself, so now smokehouse, smelter, and stuff like that is being offered to me as an option. And after you select that, there's another set of things you need to pick, which would be the orders, obviously. And there's also perks and conditions. I couldn't find out what they mean by perks, but I could figure out what conditions are. Thankfully. And it's like a cornerstone. It's called a cornerstone, which is like a map run or modifier. And you can learn more about the different types of cornerstones over here. Every now and then you would have a choice to pick a cornerstone, and they pretty much further nudge you into playing a map in a certain way, focusing on a certain resource or producing a certain product. So I think it's a great mechanic, and look at just how many of those there are. Obviously, a lot of them are still locked, but even the ones that are unlocked are plenty. In order to survive, each settlement will need resources. This is where exploration comes. As you chop down trees, you will reach areas called glades, which on the map right now you're seeing those foggy areas. You have to chop down the trees by telling the game which trees you want chopped. Like that, like that, like that. Obviously, you have to be careful because there are dangerous glades. This glade would contain a threat, but it also gives plenty of rewards in return. So high risk, high return. And there's also very dangerous glades. I'm not sure if there's one in this specific map. But there are those as well that are very dangerous. This one, for example. So that's pretty much the core element of the game: exploring, chopping trees down, unlocking new glades, and in there's the random element of what would be in the glade. Would there be more resources? Would there be the resources you were hoping to get? If not, you gotta do the best you can with whatever resources it throws at you, and gather them, collect them, turn them into whatever else you can, and use them wisely. And since you have a limited range on your wood chopping camps, you can move them. You can place the camp and then tell it, okay, I don't need it to be there. I need to move it. You don't need to destroy it. At first I was doing that, demolishing the camp and rebuilding it. But you can straight up move it, which definitely saves you time because it happens faster. Let's put it that way. And yeah, there's more information about exploration and about everything in the Atlas. I've put that on my website. So for those of you who want more information rather than watching an extremely long video where I talk in detail, you can read it in the website guide. But let's quickly mention about glade events. Those things, the dangerous and very dangerous ones, would have events where you can find certain kind of maybe like ghosts. You can find an enchanted cauldron or something like that. So you would have to offer goods. You would have to bring certain types of resources or goods. You would have to take one or more villagers and put them to work to handle that event. Otherwise, something bad might happen. People might end up leaving, dying, and so on. Then there's also the hostility and forest mysteries. Hostility is something that grows as you play. Again, more information about it in the Atlas over here. So you start with 0 hostility, and as your town grows, it slowly increases with certain actions like discovering glades, welcoming new villagers, or assigning new woodcutters. You can find the full list of hostility sources by hovering over the hostility icon again. So yeah, definitely a lot of extra layers added to the game, and there's just so much information in this guide here in the Atlas. Definitely suggest reading it to new players. Now let's talk about the upgrade system. It is that one permanent upgrades place where you spend food stockpiles, machinery, and artifacts that you earn through your runs on various upgrades, on rebuilding the ruins of the smoldering city, which is the only safe haven of this current kingdom world, continent, whatever the world is like. And you start with the Obsidian Archive, and this is the most fundamental structure, unlocking a ton of other fundamental upgrades at various different levels. At level 3 you unlock things like advanced controls for the consumption of what types of food is consumed by which type of species. Also allow you to reroll to use Amber to reroll blueprints, things like factions system and trade routes, things like royal expeditions, which I can't show you because I haven't unlocked them. Things like those a pool of difficult, time-sensitive, and highly rewarding orders. So new types of orders, and so on. There's also all sorts of other buildings that you can unlock that provide you all sorts of different bonuses. But the main structure will be the Obsidian Archive, and even the Harpies unlock as you upgrade it as a fourth species. And as you can see, there's 16 required. This final tier requires level 16 of your Citadel. So players will have a lot of replayability, a lot of goals to work towards if they want to max out everything in the upgrades menu. Another great feature and let's say mechanics or whatever in the Smoldering City is the deeds. You unlock that kind of early by building the first upgrade, and this is where things get interesting. Actually, I think it unlocks. Yeah, it unlocks with this one. There's all sorts of them: general, exploration, prosperity, industry. But this is pretty much like an achievement or milestone reward system. You do certain things. Tutorials don't count as games, by the way. And you win games, you collect certain reputation and whatever, and you get awarded rewards such as experience, such as building blueprints of various types, and so on. So another layer of progression for players to work towards, and look at how many of those there are. Many of those are also are tied to achievements in the Steam store, most likely the Epic one as well. So more incentives for players to play and replay and just keep enjoying the game. There are 4 species in the game: humans, beavers, lizards, and harpies. Each of them have a certain preference of what they're good at and what they like doing when they work. For example, humans are adept at farming and rely and really enjoy brewing, so you can put them to farm and brew. Beavers are they're gifted woodworkers and enjoy engineering. Lizards they're good with animals and meat productions, but they prefer to work in warm environments. While harpies, they excel at alchemy and love to work with quotes. They have different attributes such as base resolve, break interval, resilient, demanding, and decadent. They also have different needs in terms of food, in terms of housing, clothing, leisure, religion, and shelters and stuff like that. So those need to be paid attention to, so you can accommodate to the type of villagers, settlers you have with you. On top of that, there is something that really helps consumption control. You unlock that at level 3 of that Obsidian Archive building in your permanent progression upgrades in the Citadel. And that allows you to control what your villagers are allowed to eat and which needs they can fulfill using the consumption control panel. really great quality of life. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to the villagers is the resolve. It is the main indicator of your villagers' well-being, and it is represented by a number between 0 and 50. This whole thing, I've posted it on my website, you can read it, but it's pretty much over here. When you go into the game, you can click here, and this is the number. See, those have 5 at the beginning. And there's reputation threshold at 15. So at 15, and there will be some event, and it would affect the reputation. It gives you some summary here of how many you have, whether there's builders, free workers, and homeless ones, and the type of things they like as well. So a lot of useful information regarding that too as well in the codex. Now, some of you are probably already wondering, okay, but how does one win and lose a run, a settlement map run? Well, you built not one but many settlements, obviously, and to successfully establish a town, and therefore, when run, you need to collect enough reputation points to fill up the entire reputation bar, which is the blue thing at the bottom. It is important to do this before the queen's impatience, which is the red thing I'll show you in a moment, reaches its maximum. If the queen loses her patience, you fail. You also lose when all your villagers leave or die. So this is how much impatience per minute. You would see it here. It could end up increasing or decreasing. This is the current impatience bar. And this is the reputation. And every time you see this thing, this is new blueprint, new blueprint, new blueprint, new blueprint. With all of those milestones. Obviously, you have to get it all the way to the end, but the game will help you with some RNG choices between new blueprints. You don't get only one, you have to choose. And this is the randomness, the roguelite element. Obviously, you have those modifiers here to take in consideration regarding what you pick. And there's also the storm to consider, and so on. But overall, when you get this new blueprint, you have to click here and then pick your reward. As I mentioned earlier, there is something called factions, and there is an influence system. I've uploaded this a screenshot of this so you can read it on the website, but I'll just say the first few things. There are multiple completing factions, 3 of them to be specific. And they're trying to settle on the world map. It usually takes them a couple of years to establish a town, and if they succeed, they claim the resources of surrounding map tiles and remove nearby modifiers or treasure chests. Once a faction decides where to settle, a colored border with a number will appear on a given map tile. The number indicates how many years are left before the faction establishes the town. So although faction towns may be sometimes an obstacle in your endeavor, they can also be very useful if you have a trading post in your settlement and a faction town is located nearby, so you can establish trade routes with it. Those are the 3 factions, Vanguards of the Stolen Keys. I've uploaded all that information on my website if you want to read it. First Dawn Company and the Brass Order, or you can just pause the video and read it that way. Now, regarding the trade routes. First of all, trading happens once you establish a trade post. They will save you a selection of goods, and they will also have some special things at the bottom. Eventually, you can even get some mysterious. There's a new trader that would sell some mysterious stuff. Eventually, you have to unlock some of the traders. You start with 3 traders unlocked. Eventually, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more unlocked by various way, and they all have different things they can sell you. And different things they're willing to buy. And again, with factions comes trade routes, which allows you to automate some sort of trading between your settlement trade post and those factions. Now let's quickly talk about performance and optimization. The game seems incredibly well optimized. It runs very well on my machine. There's also a built-in FPS counter. There's all sorts of things you can modify: complex effects, lightning flashes, motion blur. If you don't like it, you can remove it, depth of field, chromatic aberration, and even you can enable world map grid if you want to see it. It's running well on my 6GB GTX 1066GB NVIDIA GPU, but again, this was to be expected. It's not a graphically demanding behemoth. So rest assured that even potato GPUs like mine can get you stable FPS in the game. And now a quick summary of the pros and cons, which hopefully would make you figure out whether the game is to your liking, whether it's something you might want to consider. Starting with the pros, a beautifully crafted fantasy world with hand-painted textures, a fun mix of the roguelite and city builder genres. I want to stress on the fun part here and mix decently optimized. At least that's what I saw in the build I played. Lovely soundtrack, sound effects, visual effects. It's not something over the top. It's good. It fits. A huge variety of buildings waiting to be unlocked, and I really mean it when I say huge. 4 unique species of settlers. A solid amount of quality of life, such as priority for recipes or consumption control automation. Of course, some things you have to unlock, obviously. So there's that. RNG done right. Every run is unique and lets you unleash your creativity in that one run and then the next and then the next and so on. A very extensive in-game codex wiki called the Atlas that would answer most of your questions about how to play the game and how certain systems/mechanics work. Also great replayability value based on some of the other things I mentioned. Cannot visit the Smoldering City UI menu while inside of a settlement run is one of the cons, and I think it would have been nice if I could go back to the Smoldering City interface to just check some of the deeds, to preview them, to just check some other things. Of course, obviously not being able to start a new village, but just to visit some of those interfaces while inside of my settlement run would be nice. There's also no resizing of the cut trees marking circle. And sometimes you want a smaller marking circles. Sometimes you want to mark just a couple of trees and you have to mark the whole big thing and then cut it on the outside. And it's kind of annoying. So hopefully they add an option to make it smaller. If there is one and I haven't seen it, apologies. It takes a while to get things going in regards to permanent progression. So it might feel a little slow progress at first to people trying to level up their citadels. And windowed mode eats pixels from the bottom equal to the border of the top. I don't think I need to explain too much about this. It just that white border at the top on windowed mode, the equal amount of pixels in the bottom are lost to parts off screen that you cannot see, and it's annoying. Hopefully they remove the border and add a proper windowed mode mechanic. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end. Struck up, keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.